Well, we're back. We're back in the building. It is episode 4 of Saliggy and the Doc, the reunion episode officially. So happy to be with you. I am the Doc, Dr. Christian A. Friend. I'm here with my man, Saliggy. Saliggy, how you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. It's good to see you, man. I think we missed all of June and most of July, but we're here. You know, I see I got called out on Facebook, Instagram. If I was still on Twitter, I probably got called out there too. But I've been banned from Twitter like I was a president or something back in the day, but we won't get to that. But yeah, we were supposed to reconnect July 5th. What happened? I didn't call you out. You know, you called me out to the masses.
Right. So we had July. Number one, it's not a call out. I just asked a question, first of all. Let's get the facts straight. I was like, what's going on with you? You doing a solo project or what? I'm expecting to see a new Saliggy Fedolo podcast pop up.
Nah.
I just mess with you. But yeah, I think on July 5th, that fourth weekend hit, and we were like, oh, stuff to do. What were you doing July 4th weekend?
July 4th, I mean, I'm in the house, man. Look, bro,
yeah,
I'm not fucking around with these variants. The only variants I wanted to see this summer were on Loki and talking about Phase 4 of the Marvel.
Right, exactly.
Shout out to our boy Brandell, his black nerd. Yeah, we'll
here
get
he
to
goes.
But yeah,
we'll have to have him on. Brandell, you're coming on for the nerd episode.
Yeah, bring his whack ass on. He's a nerd. He rides bikes and makes unicycles. Makes a lot of money doing it though, but it's cool though.
Right. So yeah, no July 4th.
Yeah, so I didn't do anything. I didn't go anywhere, man. Like I'm telling you, I'm in the house, man. I'm one of the few people on earth, man, that is I'm content with the solitude, man.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about that in the past. Like I'm in no rush to hang out with people and talk to people I don't want to talk to. I don't feel like being in the office and cooped up and shit, and people sneezing, not washing their hands, when I wash their hands, they come back from the bathroom, all that nasty stuff.
So you working from home?
I've been working from home. I've been working from home for 20 months. I don't want to go back,
Right. I know. I don't know that I can go back, man. I've adapted so well to working from home. Like, I don't like if they tell us we got to go back, I'm gonna have to find another job or something. I don't know. I'm not gonna be able to like go 9 to 5 in somebody's building no more.
So a lot of people, I saw something on Yahoo Finance. They said about 30% of people are quitting jobs so they can just have that work-life balance they had. And
right.
My company, First Information Technology Services. I don't really fuck with them like that, but let's put them on blast.
Okay.
They
all right.
out of Crystal City, Virginia, if anybody ever watches.
Okay.
They wanted everybody to come back, I think in July. And he sent out this email, the boss, he sent out this email basically asking, how do people feel about being in the office? A lot of the others were like, yeah, I'm happy for I'm happy to come back to the office. I'm sick of being at home. I'm like, dude, I don't want to see you motherfuckers again. I don't care.
Forever?
Yes, forever, yes. And these guys talk about, well, we need camaraderie and all this other stuff and morale. I'm like, if you need to talk to me, you got my cell phone number and you got Teams and you got email. I'm good with that. Yeah. So I'm good, man. Like I'm good with it all.
I'm glad to hear it, man.
Yeah, I didn't go and barbecue and none of that stuff. I'm not looking for it. I'm good.
Yeah. Me too. I was in the crib. It's July 4th, and in major U.S. cities, you can't tell fireworks from gunshots if there's enough of it going off. Is the other thing. So we was at the crib, I don't know what we did. Nothing. But I'm like you, trying to be cautious. I like to be out in the streets doing stuff, but I'm not going into work, and I'm not. If I go in the store, I'm still masking up. And that's all we do is do our little shopping and be back at the crib.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for streaming services,
Yeah,
Netflix
man.
and
Netflix,
Hulu and
Hulu, and Disney Plus and all that shit.
yeah.
I watch that and NFL Network more than anything else, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
good with that. But the funny thing is like you see these variants out here, and you see all these people dying left and right, and people are still politicizing a vaccine, which is the craziest shit to me. But
Very crazy. Yeah. And then it's like, yeah, like US senators won't say who are anti-vaxxers won't even just say whether or not they've taken the vaccine.
they have.
Right, because they're manipulating people who are also anti-vaxxers to think like the vaccine's unsafe. I'm going to ride with that, but I know from my inside intel as a person in the government that I better take this vaccine. So it's really sick, man. It's really sick what's happening in our country, and I'm still concerned, right? Like we thought, Trump is gone. It's all good. It is not all good, son.
No, 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 no. I mean, he's out of the office, but he's still a presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I saw
And
some
that
video.
ideology is alive.
I saw this video today of a pastor, one of your ilk, uh, in his congregation, talking about if.
Wait a minute. I don't see like an imam beheading people and be like one of your ilk, Saliggy.
Well, I'm not an imam, so it's all good.
Okay, all right.
If
Well, look, my ordination dropped. My ordination expired, so I'm not officially a pastor anymore.
okay, well,
But anyway, you saw a pastor.
someone of your former ilk, a current ordained pastor. I forget where he is, but he was screaming in his congregation saying that he doesn't believe in this Delta stuff and it's just all propaganda. And if you are vaccinated or come into his church wearing masks, he's going to kick you out. Mm-hmm. How do you tell people that are coming to a house of worship who are wearing a mask that you're going to kick them out because, or whatever reasons, ideologies you carry? That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then to say you represent like a loving God, right? But that's what gets me is the conflict of this is what I'm doing, but I'm representing in theory like Jesus of the Bible. Jesus of the Bible was like the exact opposite of what some people are saying. It drives me nuts. But I now have to identify myself as a disciple of Jesus Christ or a disciple of Yeshua, the Christ. I even go to the Yeshua so that people know it's like not the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus.
You got the brother with the bull and the sand.
Right, like the dude from Palestine, like the brown dude from Palestine who was falsely accused by authorities and then, murdered for no wrongdoing. Yeah. That sounds like a familiar story.
Yeah, man. Age old, as old as time.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff has happened since we've been gone, though. I mean, you brought up Palestine. I know we wanted to talk about that a while ago, but I think it's lost a lot of its verve at this point. But yeah, it's crazy. Like, me being a Muslim, during Ramadan, you see people being ousted from their homes during Israeli occupation. It's crazy as shit. Like, the history of Palestine is so crazy, where you have people that were living in concert regardless of religion. Palestinian Christians, Palestinian Jews, Palestinian Muslims. And then, of course, the British get involved, start dropping people off into new homes. And now you have these Israeli Jews who are now the oppressors in this territory of the world. And it's the craziest shit is, when you talk about the Jews, you think about the Holocaust and how they were oppressed and how they were murdered and how they were gassed. And it's like you're learning the same tactics from your oppressor. It's almost, it's a wild, cyclical situation. But
yeah, and for me, it's interesting because like Jewish, because of Israel in some ways, has become like a national identity as opposed to a religious identity. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Like when you say like, okay, this is a state religion, And then, Israel isn't the only place where this happens. And I don't know that they even say it's a state religion, but if it's founded in that way, based on kind of a religious cultural group, and then you say, like, we represent this. I mean, it's the Star of David on the flag. So it's like this intricate connection between like religion and nationhood.
No.
Never a good result, man. Doesn't matter what the nation is. Like, it just, like, anytime you try and put together God and human affairs and say, like, God represents this nation or these boundaries or whatever, you try to put boundaries on God, you're always going to end up killing people.
Yeah.
Always. Like, throughout history, it's like the Crusades, right? Like,
yeah,
it's this real, and the religious connection, whether it be Christianity or Judaism or any religion, is also like, well, in the case of colonialism, it's mainly Christianity, but like this colonial connection to religion is another thing that freaks me out, man. It
Oh, I
just
mean,
saddens me.
Islam is not free of guilt from that. They're not absolved from guilt from any of that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, like, we're all human. And anytime humans form into these groups where they believe they have like the singular answer around religion, then, they're going to be after power. And when they get power, it's going to hurt other people.
You would think during a global pandemic, a lot of shit would kind of die out, but you see it just in people's behaviors, not just the Palestine. It's kind of peeling off the Palestine conversation, but you see it like look at the airlines. People are acting a fool on planes where you would have never seen that before. Seeming very entitled. I guess them being in the house for so long, they forgot how to act and how to fall in line with proper decorum. And they're smacking stewardesses on airplanes and punching other people who are slow for getting their bags out of the carry-on section or whatever. And it's it's wild to see. I mean, crime is on the rise, but 600,000 people in this country have died, and I think what the global number was 4 to 5 million, somewhere between that. So,
wow,
what the hell,
Yeah, man. What I'm learning is like, and been thinking about a lot, is like trauma and the impact of trauma on people. Like, from a personal experience, just like the childhood traumas that I've dealt with or whatever are things that I have to manage now, result in anxiety and frustration at times. I caught myself at work yesterday being real edgy. My boss was like, "When you taking a vacation?" But the trauma, like, so I'm used to it. I'm aware of it, right? I'm mindful, right? Paying attention to how that's playing out and how it's impacting others. This pandemic has been traumatic to people, but it's people who are not used to dealing with trauma, and so or aren't self-aware or mindful. And when that happens, it's like you lose control. Like, you get a trauma response is like a fight or flight mechanism, where it's like fight, flight, or flee, or what do they call it? Fight, flight, or freeze, right? Like, you either like just panic completely, you react violently, or you run. And so what we see happening at airports, in my opinion, is just people's trauma responses. But we as a country are not trauma informed. We don't talk about that as a health issue. And then individuals, if you're not self-aware to know that, hey, I might be having a trauma response, all manner of things gonna happen.
Yeah, so to piggyback on that, I think one of the things that I have done since our last podcast episode, I have started going to therapy.
Oh, good shit, man.
Right. So you talked about
round of applause for Saliggy. I'm proud, man. That's good shit right
there. Nah, I appreciate that. So it's funny, like I think you've known this. Like, I've had issues over the last decade with highway anxiety, driving on the highway and speed and stuff.
Yeah.
And, we talked about that in the past, where I used to drive everywhere, any time of the day, be there, be square, whatever. But you just talked about fight, flight, or freeze. I've been in a freeze mode for 10 years because of this. I've figured out solutions, right? Like, you got to figure out resolve and try to create some type of solutions as workarounds to get to where you want to go. I'm in my 4th week. so far it's like, okay, I'm doing this homework, and we're talking about other things like control, and you just mentioned being mindful and thoughtful of certain things. So I'm doing that, but I think the immediate reaction would be then, okay, well, how do we figure this shit out?
Right.
I
Where's the
got
fix?
this one issue, but this dude is trying to dig into other shit to try
Yeah.
to figure out where to bring us to this point.
Right.
I'm not frustrated yet, but I'm like, yo,
But it's coming.
yeah, I'm
Right.
like, yo, come on, man, like, what's good? It's a black dude. I think he's Dell State undergrad, Howard University grad. So
That's dope.
black man, we're the same age, so we're talking through some of this stuff. And to his credit, he's like, I've never heard anything like this before. But I've talked to other people that have had maybe a friend or two that have dealt with some of this too. So I'm trying to do my own, workaround
Work.
behind the scenes with that to try to figure this out. So like tonight, like later tonight, like late, like 2 a.m, I'll probably try to jump on 395 for a hot second, where there's no traffic, not a lot of stuff, not a lot of people on the road, and see if I can get through getting from my house to Crystal City, somewhere familiar, and then come back home. I guess the safe way to me, so at least I can say
Right.
I've accomplished that, because at some point I got to get on the
Yeah.
highway with other
Confronting
people.
your fears, confronting your anxieties and worries. That's
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
That's really
And
good.
the thing, yeah, I mean, fear might be a strong word. I don't know if it was fear, but it was more frustration. It's
Yeah.
like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on in my head where I can't get back on the highway like I used to?
Yeah.
It was more confusion, more frustration. But yeah, we talked about this a while ago, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and use my insurance to get through that and figure some of this
Good
stuff out.
stuff. Yeah, use
Yeah,
that
no
insurance
doubt.
while you got it. What was I gonna say? But this is really good, man, in a lot of different ways. The thing about therapy being frustrating because you could be in it for a while and not like see meaningful results is interesting because I feel that way often about therapy. Like, um, but and like what I will say is like, okay, it's been 4 weeks and you finna get on the highway, right? Like so it's like I don't see no results, but tonight you already got a plan to get on the highway. So it
Uh,
does something where it's like it's operating in the background when the therapists start asking you these questions about, like for me, I'll speak from the I is one of my principles. Is like I like and the therapist be like, well, tell me about your mother and your daddy and all your family of origin and stuff. I'm like, what does it have to do with it? But I've come to learn that like all the stuff we have is learned somewhere. And 9 times out of 10, it's learned in the places where you spent the most amount of time and with the people you spent the most your formative years with. So it's like you got to dig stuff up. You got to get to the root of it.
yeah, I don't want to dig too much and find some shit I don't want to find, man.
It's
Something
scary. It can
I'm,
be scary, man. Yeah.
yeah, I'm
I
very
have I
told.
have found some shit be like ding, ding, ding. It was like, wait a minute, there's something under there. It's
Yeah,
big. It's really big. And pull it out and be like,
I'm not trying to
oh,
hit that oil
damn.
derrick and watch something gush up, and then you got a whole lot of other problems and spit it out.
Well,
So
man, hey, but you never, man, we talking about this with someone recently, about someone recently, you never resolve it though. If you don't, right? Like it may be like, okay, well, I'm good on the highway now, but then it's going to manifest some other way, right? So for me, I think about like eating is like number one. Like I'm a binge eater. It's one of the ways it manifests. But at past points in my life, it's been, or even at, overworking or pornography use or whatever. There's been like all these like layers of coping mechanisms that I've been using. And when I end one, another one will pop up. And until I've gotten to like down and dug everything up and been like, oh, I see where all this is coming from. You just like, I'll say, I just ended up using something else to cover up the pain that I was trying to run from.
yeah, I mean, shit, you and me, you and I, there's
Right.
probably some of that too, But yeah, I'm taking the first step. So 4 episodes in on my therapy situation. So I'll
Oh
keep you
man,
posted on some of that.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah,
It helps me, and I grow when we talk about it. What was I going to ask you about? I was thinking about things I've used to cover up pain. I thought about drugs and alcohol, and I know you don't drink, right? So is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
No alcohol. So let me ask you, what's the from your religious experience, because I know you can only speak for yourself, what's the Islamic rule on or rules on weed?
Oh yeah, so all drugs are considered haram, and haram means it's like
Hmm.
essentially banned or whatever. So anything that can cloud your judgment or kind of make you, I guess, lethargic in thought from your normal state of mind would be
Hmm.
considered a drug. So marijuana is a drug. Now, here's my stance on marijuana. I don't smoke it. I know a lot of people that I've come up with have smoked it. And I see the benefits for some people, more so for them kind of as their mental remedies, right? So if something is if something's bothering them or whatever, they use it to kind of put their mind in a space where there's comfortability, things are slowed down, and they kind of get away from that, right? Then you have your recreational weed smokers. They just kind of do it because it's almost like drinking. People go to a bar to drink and they socialize. Some people just kind of socialize and smoke. And then you have those that are actually suffering pain, whether it's mental
Hmm.
pain or primarily physical pain. And, you know, I think a lot of these professional leagues, especially here in America, can't speak for everywhere else, but in America, I think a lot of leagues are becoming more understanding. They're relaxing some of their uh, anti-marijuana rhetoric that they've used for decades, and a lot of that is racial, right? We could talk
Hmm.
about how marijuana was used to essentially thrust Billie Holiday into a whole nother sphere of her career. Um, they use that to say this reefer is something that these blacks are using or these Negroes are using, and it's clouding their
Right.
judgment. It's bad for them. So marijuana was used that way. Whereas if you look at like the '60s with with the rise of Woodstock and the like of psychedelic rock, they went from weed to LSD to a lot of these other drugs that were mind opening. So it's like, you have this racial undertone of how LSD is this, but weed is that, especially when
Yeah.
weed started to kind of become I guess, the drug of choice in hip hop, especially with the
Mm.
album like The Chronic. I mean,
Right.
that's one of I think The Chronic is the most impactful album of the genre of hip hop
Oh well,
and rap.
that's up
That's a
for
whole
discussion
that's a whole
another
other
time.
conversation
Yeah.
down the line.
Yeah.
But um, I think what that did was really kind of tie marijuana and hip hop into some type of marriage. And it's almost the same way with like the N word.
Right.
Repurpose it and change it into something that's for us by us to a certain degree.
I hear
Um,
that. Yeah.
and nowadays, I'm talking to the 2020s. Um, it's so funny now. A lot of these companies are popping up. These marijuana companies, and a lot of people
Oh,
with
it's big
money
business.
are
It's big
investing
business. Billions of dollars. Yeah.
where it was taboo for
Right.
decades.
Hmm.
Now people are understanding. Oh, it's not that bad. So let's go ahead and profit on this.
Right. And there's racial disparities even in that, and then like who's got access to the marijuana industry. Shout out to the people out there who are like working on ensuring that there's black ownership in the marijuana industry as it becomes legal.
Yeah.
'Cause that's a place where it's like, if you don't get it on the ground floor, you're going to have four or five major companies at the end of the day that box everybody else out. And,
Yeah.
again, increase in the racial wealth gap.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I asked about the weed thing is two things. There's like the spiritual principle piece of this, or I wouldn't even call it spiritual principle. I think it's religious principle because most Christians would be like, no weed smoking also. But I always just like wonder, like, to haram or sinful in Christian language, like Diet Mountain Dew or Mountain Dew probably has more control of people than marijuana does. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so many, like caffeine, sugar. I just been reflecting on the fact that there's so many drugs in my own body, just like that are
Yeah,
completely legal.
absolutely.
Ibuprofen, right? Like, and people can become dependent on any of these things. So it's just really interesting that we've chosen marijuana or alcohol, or alcohol is legal, right? Cigarettes are legal, right? That's worse, in my opinion, for
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
So it's just really interesting. I do think there's, a racial component to it. There's absolutely an economic component to it. And it just reminded me also, like you said about sports, of Sha'Carri Richardson, the
Uh,
Olympic sprinter, being suspended for supposedly a positive marijuana test, because which is crazy to me. It's definitely not an athletic performance enhancing drug that's going to help you run faster.
yeah, we could talk a bit about the Olympics. So I think we want to get into some conversation about Olympic basketball, but real quick,
Sure.
I'm thinking like the three important Black women in this Olympic conversation this
Mm-hmm.
month all are dealing with mental health issues. I mean,
Mm.
Sha'Carri Richardson was the first one with the marijuana
Mm-hmm.
test that banned her from this current Olympics, and we'll get into Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka after that. But hers is very interesting, right? Like I am like you. Marijuana is not a performance enhancer. Um, and for my mindset, I think a lot of these rules are antiquated. Okay. But the problem here is America doesn't control uh, what happens in the Olympic drug testing. It's a global thing. So, I mean, Japan being the host country, from what I understand, marijuana, being called marijuana in Japan is a 5-year sentence out there.
Wow.
Now, mind you, she didn't smoke it in Japan. She smoked it in the US after her biological mother passed, and she was using it to cope. And I guess at the time, it kind of coincided with testing, and it came up as a positive test for marijuana. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know who in the U.S. Olympic Committee fought for her. You know what I mean? I don't know if anybody really fought for her. Whereas if it was like a Michael Phelps or a Katie Ledecky, would they have
Right.
fought for them to participate in the Olympics and say, "Oh, but or he or she was dealing with this, that, and the other." I don't want to make everything about race, but it's just interesting that I didn't see anybody necessarily step up to the plate for Sha'Carri Richardson in that instance. But a rule was broken, and so be it. And the sad part is, there's a pandemic. So how is this Olympics really? How is this going to actually be handled, especially with the COVID rates that were happening 2 days before the ring ceremony, and then also or the torch ceremony actually, and then um, also she's got to wait another 3 years to run again. So I think she's what, is she 20, 21? So she'll still be in her athletic prime,
Young. Right.
but 3 years somebody else will come and be like the new fast chick.
Sure. She might not get any more Olympic medals, but she'll still dominate world championships and
Yeah.
U.S. championships. But your point from the beginning around like mental health, and I know you're probably going to, we would mention Simone Biles and others, but it's just striking to me that that's the case. It's like a theme that's like running through our conversation. But also, I just want to talk about how, like, specifically for Black women, right? Like,
Mm.
Black women have so much to bear. Like, I think about the fact that systemic oppression, racism affects my mental health. And part of the reason I feel stress and anxiety. Now, imagine that on top of sexism, on top of like the historic legacy of always being pushed to the bottom as Black women have,
Right.
and having to overcome all that, and then to have to do it in the public eye and people holding you up as a role model. Like that is so much pressure and stress. I just really applaud any person in general, as I did you, who could say like, I'm working on my mental health. But to be Simone Biles to be able to do it at the Olympics, at that point, it's just like bravo, Simone Biles, like to demonstrate like, you know, Naomi Osaka, same thing. Like to be able to, in those moments where people will say like the more valuable thing is your performance, to be able to say, no, myself and my identity and my mental health are more valuable.
Right.
Like that's incredible. That's a huge statement to the world, and I appreciate them both for doing it.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to make everything racial, but I want to do things comparatively. When Kevin Love back in 2018 talked about his depression and his mental health, and he stepped away for a certain amount of games, making what, $18-19 million a year. No one really crushed him for that. Actually, it became this theme, right? Well, so when he said something, DeMar DeRozan said something. And then after DeMar DeRozan, you got Paul George talking about his mental health in the bubble. But the Paul George situation is a little different, you know, the playoff P versus pandemic P and blaming
Sure.
Doc Rivers and shit. You know, it's a lot of quirky stuff with his thing. But Kevin Love, white American superstar, NBA player, it's almost like he becomes a celebrity for being a challenger and breaking the ceiling on mental health for professional athletes. But then Naomi Osaka, 2 years later, says, hey, I don't feel like talking, you know, post match. And then the French Open, which I've already got issues with France as a people, so I don't want to get into all this right now.
Please, though.
Colonialism and
we don't need to be bashing on
that the French do, you know, whatever. But for them to say, well, no, you're the number one seed and you need to talk. I love how somebody who I thought was just a real meek, you know, mealy mouth young girl, she challenged him and said, fuck that. If you saying I gotta withdraw, that's what I'm gonna do. And then after that, Wimbledon wants that too? Deuces. I'll see you in the Olympics.
Right. I don't need y'all. Like that, and that's the statement it makes to me. And that I really appreciate that. Like people are so used to thinking like we need these institutions, we need to like if you're at you gotta prove that you're at the top and stay here at the top. And like, look, this ain't about that. This is about survival, this is about health, this is about wealth. And like, you know, okay, like I don't have to win all the tournaments, right? If I could, you know, I told my financial advisor, like, I need to find $5 million so I can retire and live at the level I want to starting right now, right? And so, you know, it's about that. It's about generating wealth. It's about lifestyle. It's about living the life you want to live, and being self-determined, really, to be able to say, like, this is what I want to do with my life. This is how I would use the term self-actualize and become the highest form of myself. And people have in the past felt like you need to allow institutions, whether it be Wimbledon or the French Open or a sports team or an organization of some other kind, to force you to do what you don't want to do. But I think the more we see our worth and value, the more valued we'll be, right? Like we create value by saying like, I don't need you. I know who I am. I know what I can do. And then people will respect you and value you for that.
And so the funny thing with Naomi Osaka recently, last week, you know, much maligned and jobless former anchor Megyn Kelly, I don't even know where she is anymore. She jumped out on Twitter and was like, oh, I thought Naomi Osaka's got these issues of mental health, but she's on the cover of all these magazines. And Naomi Osaka jumped back and was like, sis, you're supposed to be a responsible journalist. But
Slap it back.
if you knew anything, I did these months ago. So basically, shut the fuck up and sit your dumb ass down
Right.
until somebody calls for you. I think, Megyn Kelly is so yesterday's news, but, it's always funny how she tends to jump out here and tries to ride and piggyback on somebody else's success to make her voice heard. And I just like the fact that Naomi Osaka, who before 2020, I just thought was just a meek, mealy mouth, milk toast person, she's really become a face of something that I truly respect. In today's athlete, and she's at the forefront right now, along with LeBron and Chris Paul and those guys. So I really appreciate her. I've done a whole
Yeah.
180 on her. I like her a lot.
I
And
had not formed an opinion of her yet, but I agree. Like she's been like the forefront of social justice fighting over the last
yeah,
year or
I
so.
was totally apathetic towards her before. I thought I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
she's great at tennis. She beat Serena, cool." But no,
Yeah.
she's the shit. And
She's
then
special.
today with Simone Biles, which came out of nowhere. I mean, but it's interesting. Like, everybody's been calling her a goat, goat, which she is. I mean, like, for a generation before us, everybody loved Mary Lou Retton and in gymnastics. And to be honest, when it comes to the Olympics, I don't really care about anything but track. I don't even care about field, just track and basketball, really. But she's been so dominant, the last Olympics and everything that she's done in other gymnastic events globally. For her today to step down and say, I don't want to be involved in the team final, I know it was a shock, but first people thought it was an injury. So I was like, a physical injury. And I was like, oh shit, that sucks. But then it was her choice. She was like, yo, I just don't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can I can relate to that because I think during this pandemic, I don't think a lot of people feel right in general.
Here's the other thing. Like people will criticize her, but for those same people, if you had an option to not show up to work on a day, and at the end of the day you go home, you're still a multimillionaire with additional multi-million dollar endorsement deals,
Right.
right? You mean to tell me you're not gonna call in? Like it doesn't make sense that any critique of someone saying like, I need to take some time for my health. It's just the only thing that would cause us to like critique someone saying, I need to take time for my health is a, a dysfunction as a country, as a people, as a society. If there's anyone saying, I want to take time because it's going to make me healthier, there's no argument for that because no one really knows but that person. So
But
why
yeah,
would we even argue or critique it?
it's just think generationally, it's just like, especially with entertainers and athletes, specifically athletes, people are like, oh, just go and play. You do this and you win. And we've all been guilty of it.
Shut up and dribble. Right.
Shut up and dribble for sure. I ain't guilty on that shit, but that's somebody else's problem. But no, like for like, you like Jay Cutler when he had the knee in Chicago during the NFC
Oh yeah.
Championship game.
I was
And
definitely critical of him for that. I can't front.
hell yeah, I was critical just because of who he is and who he's always been and the countenance. He's just standing there. He's standing up with his hands crossed while the dude Caleb Haney is coming back and trying to get Chicago to the Super Bowl. And he just looks like he's just like, ho hum. My knee was twisted. I'm good. But then everybody crushed him for that. But if that was today, I wonder how people's perspective would change. That was 11 years ago. And everybody was like, yo, this dude is a clown. He was his teammates, former athletes. If you got a chance to go to the Super Bowl and you just kind of tweak your knee, all you got to do is throw the ball and stand upright. What's your issue? I think a lot of people really had the issue with him going to the sideline and standing up, not sitting down and having his knee wrapped up, but him standing up, just holding his helmet in his hand like this. I mean, it was just it's a bad look. But it's a different day. I think that I think today's generation of kids, I guess, what are they? Gen X, right?
No, we're well past X. We're in
I mean, Gen. I'm
past.
sorry, we're
We're
at
past
Gen
Z. Yeah,
Z. Yeah, the
and then
Gen Z,
millennial. Right, right.
millennial. I think it's us, Gen X, then millennial, then Gen Z, right?
Yeah, I don't
So
know.
yeah, I just know that generation.
They're just young.
They're a lot more into their feelings and um, don't really care about what other people think or perceive, which sometimes I think is empowering. Sometimes it's annoying as shit, but it is empowering to say, I generally don't give a damn about what you think. I've got these issues or this problem. I'm going to work through it, whether you're behind me or not. Cool, cool. Who's to say if this person's issue is real or not? Um, but I think these three women uh, during this Olympic window have had these three black women have had an interesting journey uh, from here to Japan. Well, for Biles and Osaka from here to Japan, and Shikari not getting to her Olympic dreams.
Hmm.
It's pretty interesting month or so with that.
So we got just a couple minutes left, man. Let's just. I want to hear you've been to the Olympics and you said basketball. So what are your, three key takeaways from the U.S. men's basketball team at the Olympics and before, and also do the same for the NBA Finals, right?
All
Three
right,
key takeaways.
three key takeaways. The world is caught up. So the NBA has
Hmm.
been all about Euro basketball,
Hmm.
shooting, working outside in. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think the most important factor is the elimination of the traditional five, the center. It showed in that game against France, and I think it'll show throughout the rest of this. When you don't
Yeah,
have
for the fact that NBA has eliminated it. Yeah,
yeah,
because Rudy Gobert controlled the paint for the
and
French
Rudy
team.
Gobert sucks. Like, I mean,
He's
he's
not
very
well.
limited.
Yeah, he's a great rim protector
He's a
and
solid
he's
rim
a great
protector.
rebounder, and that's
Solid
what he
rim
did.
protector. Yeah,
Right.
he does what he does: block shots, rebounds the ball. He's not an offensive threat, but when you
You
when you're
need
up
that.
when you're up 9 with 4 minutes to go, you ain't supposed to lose that game to France. And Evan Fournier,
Yeah.
he's a
And
marginal.
and Nick Batum.
Yeah, Batum is. I like Batum's game. Batum is
I like
versatile.
him too. I
Yeah,
like him too.
Evan Fournier, like, come on, like, really?
Yeah.
So
So that's
that's
one.
that's
The
one.
world is caught up.
Secondly, three of your players just played in the finals last week, and you
Well,
flew
that's
them
true.
from Milwaukee to Japan.
Yeah.
Booker played a lot of minutes. Drew Holiday led them in scoring. I don't know if Chris Middleton played or not, but this roster is poorly constructed. People are shitting on Popovich, which he does deserve some blame for sure. But I don't see anybody crushing Jerry Colangelo for piecing this team together. When I saw the roster, like
It
after
doesn't
the
make sense.
after the top heavy part, like Durant
Yeah.
and Lillard, and I looked at the rest of the roster, I was like, what the hell? Keldon Johnson? Sadiq Bey? Well, they were on the roster. Why? I don't get that. Like, yeah,
Right.
it's not a good roster at all. And yeah, thirdly, I don't know if these cats are going to medal. To be honest, let's see what happens. They should beat Iran tonight. I don't know any Iranian or Persian basketball stars in the world, so they should win that. That should
If
be a
they
blow.
lose to Iran, it's going to be problematic.
Oh
Um,
yeah, just come home.
yeah. You got this roster. I'll just say this, and then we'll go to the finals. This roster: Jason Tatum, Chris Middleton, JaVale McGee, Damian Lillard, Zach LaVine, Keldon Johnson, Drew Holiday, Draymond Green, Jeremy Grant, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bam Adebayo. You got a whole bunch of 2 through 4. There's no 5. There's no one that comes in the game like a Kyle Lowry type and settles everyone down and says, "This is what we're running. Let's get into it. Make sure we get it." I'm just agreeing with you that this is poorly constructed. I guess they're saying that Drew Holiday
Yeah,
and Zach
Lillard.
Levine and Lillard were supposed to run the point.
Yeah.
But they're scorers. All three are scoring point guards, like some more than others. You don't have a true point guard on the team. And like I don't understand. I feel like every team needs like veteran point guard presence. And I guess Drew Holiday was that for the Milwaukee Bucks. That he was one of the missing pieces that brought them the championship. But I don't see where it is on the Olympic team.
Yeah,
And he's not serving that purpose. Maybe
and
he
they all
will
haven't
there.
played together. I think it's the pandemic too. They
Right.
all haven't played together either. So,
Sure. So how about NBA Finals? What's your key takes? Saliggy's hot takes on NBA Finals.
so I was rooting hard for Chris Paul and Monty Williams. Monty
I was
Williams, the
too.
PG County dude, Potomac High School. Of all the public high schools in PG County, they had a dude from Potomac who's an upstanding gentleman. Like, I mean, Potomac High School is it's not much to write about. But I was rooting for him, especially with his journey in the NBA and a lot of the personal things that he's dealt with in his life, with the heart murmur and his wife died in a car accident a few years back. I was rooting for them hard. And when they went up 2-0, I was like, shit, I guess Phoenix might really try to sweep this thing.
That's what I was thinking too, man.
Yeah. And I figured that they were saying, okay, Giannis is the only one that's getting buckets. So we'll let Giannis get 40 and then we'll try to figure out everybody else. What they didn't figure out is that Chris Middleton is the closer. Chris Middleton closed shit up. And then I guess the games 3 through 6, you also saw, again, for the MT time with Chris Paul, something was wrong. Was it his hand?
Something was wrong.
Was it his leg? I mean, he just wasn't right,
Mm-hmm.
I think with the exception of game 5, he really didn't shoot well like he did in the Western Conference Finals. Devin Booker, my problem, I like Devin Booker. I think that he's going to be a star. But my issue with Devin Booker is I think people have put that shit in his head that, you're Kobe's guy, so you're going to be like Kobe. The only way you're like Kobe is that you heist a lot. You shoot a lot of shit. And he'll hit most of it, no doubt. I think he thinks that he's a supreme playmaker. Every time he over dribbled and didn't pull up from the elbow, he turned the ball over in key moments.
As did Chris Paul, which is, I think that's what ultimately killed them, is that Paul couldn't get it done one-on-one, right? Mm-hmm. Like when he got the ISO at the top of the key, either the health defense was effective or he wasn't beating his guy later in the series. And so then that means you get a kick out to who's the number 2 option? It's Devin Booker. And he is not an isolation player.
Nope.
He's got a lot of skills, but he's not I'm going to catch the ball, move the triple threat, and then I'll put these moves on you and get to the rim or pull up for a jumper. Like, he can do a little bit of that, but you would see he'd have 1 or 2 dribble moves. To your point, I'm agreeing with you. And then he'd turn over or he'd be stuck, like on a pivot foot trying to find somebody open. And they really did miss a third offensive option. And I do think, regardless of what people's critiques of their team, Milwaukee did have at least 3 offensive options.
I thought Ayton regressed in the finals. I think everybody got so excited about what Ayton did against the Clippers, and also who they played. Was it the Clippers they played in the Western Conference Finals?
I don't remember right now, but none of those teams had Brook Lopez and Giannis and Bobby Portis, right? Portis. Like, they had a significant front line that was out bullying them. Like, that's the other thing. Phoenix got beat up and bullied.
Their rotation got shit on in game 1. We didn't even think about Dario Saric much, I was thinking, okay.
They missed them. They missed them after the injury. They
missed him after the injury for sure. I think they should have played Frank Kaminsky a little better. I think you found out too late that, he is somewhat skilled. He ain't Giannis, but he ain't Brook Lopez, but at least he can eat up some minutes in the paint and save some of the fouls that Ayton was eating up. And I think Cameron Payne it's the funniest thing to even say this. Cameron Payne should have had an increase in minutes. It's the funniest thing to say because that dude was out of the league and everybody knew him as a dancer on the sideline. He was Russell Westbrook's dance mate. That's really what he was for a long time. And then all of a sudden he can play again. It was crazy. But I'm very happy for Giannis. Drew Holiday was the linchpin because I think even though he didn't shoot well for the entire series, when he decided to pick up Chris Paul 94 feet, that was it. That changed a lot. He's bigger, he's stronger, and I just think Giannis was dominant. I think Giannis really showed why he was a two-time MVP. He's still raw. That's the crazy shit. He
right. If he learned to shoot, it's straight
13.
scary.
He dropped
No
50
jump
and
shot
13 and don't have a jumper
at all. If he's developed any jump shot, it's really quite scary. I don't want to end the conversation without giving a shout out to PJ Tucker because, like, yeah, in addition to what Drew Holiday did, I feel like he was veteran leadership for that team that gave them helped to give them the winning attitude that they had. I even think Giannis probably benefited a lot from having him on the roster.
Yeah, I don't, it pains me to give Budenholzer credit, Coach Mike Budenholzer, but for some reason, I don't know how he did this. He got Chris Paul caught up in type of defensive switches all the time. And I kept saying, Chris Paul should not be on anybody other than PJ Tucker. And next thing you know, he's with Chris Middleton and some type of pick and roll
back
shit.
down.
I was like, holy shit, what the fuck? How does this keep happening? So yeah, it was an interesting.
And they kept finding ways to get Giannis at the rim too.
For sure.
Whether it be ISO, whether it be in the pick and roll action, whatever it was, he'd end up with the ball within 5 feet of the basket somehow.
I really fucks with Giannis, man. He's Nigerian. Fuck all that Greek shit. The Nigerian dude is a beast. He's solid. Once he figures out how to hit.
Well, we all from West Africa somewhere. Like
we are, but they kept how the public do the Greek freak. Nah, that nigga Nigerian.
Yeah,
he might have
the new Nigerian nightmare.
Yeah, he's nice. He's nice. But I guess before we go, man, I want to dedicate my side of the episode to my brother Diallo Crenshaw's father, TL Thomas L. Crenshaw. He's going to be laid to rest this Friday, the 30th, and I'll show up at the wake, mask and gloves on. I don't know what happened. I don't know how it happened. I just know Diallo posted something on Facebook that his father had passed a couple weeks ago. So want to dedicate that to him because his dad was always cool with me. I know he's had his demons in the past and everything, but every time I saw him, it was love, man. So definitely want to dedicate this to TL Crenshaw. Rest in peace.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that, brother. And sending our love, our prayers, our thoughts are with you, Diallo. We love you, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's good to be back with you, Salim. When we gonna get together again? Or you off to do your solo project?
Let me know when you gotta show up, man. Let me know when I gotta shave my head and shower.
Okay, all right. Well, episode 4 is in the can. We won't make it so long next time, family. Thanks for tuning in. Peace, love, grace. We love you. Shout out from Saliggy and the Doc. Take care of yourselves. Peace.
Stay black.
Stay black.